You've been called to watch this. You've been called to listen to this because there's something in this that resonates about where you need to go next. But in order to close the loop of that experience, we have to allow ourselves to feel all the feelings that we've never felt. If I had been stuck in that version of me, I'd still be exhausted. Healing cannot begin unless safety is present. Hello everybody, welcome to the Lucy Superfox Show. My name is Lucy Superfox and this is my podcast. So in this very first episode, I want to share a little bit with you about what it really means to go into or be in a healing era. If you were a listener of my last podcast, The Way I See It, then you will know that I went on a deep dive journey over the past few years into myself in order to do that inner healing work so I could sit here with you today as my most empowered, most authentic self, ready to move into my freedom era, cueing the next podcast. So if right now you are someone that's feeling exhausted, listless, you've lost the passion, you've lost the love, or your body is showing you signs and symptoms of exhaustion, of lack of energy, then the truth is it's probably time. I didn't recognize for a long time that being triggered all the time, being angry, being frustrated, being sad, being annoyed, I just thought I was a passionate person. But what started to happen was that my experience of life became more and more negative. And it was at that point that I had to sit with myself, despite being in therapy for years, by the way, and actually recognize it was time to go in. It was time to stop looking out. It was time to stop seeking and achieving and hustling and growing. And actually, it was time to reflect. It was time to pull back. You know, you're going to hear me interview a ton of guests over this podcast series, and we're going to deep dive into what it means to be in a healing era, a freedom era, a growth era. But what it looked like for me was slowing down and being willing to slow down and move out of this constant need to move and into this calm and this safety. Because healing cannot begin unless safety is present. So my journey with healing started very much when I had what I'm going to call my second nervous breakdown. And a nervous breakdown, all it simply is when your central nervous system, which is the operating system in your body, can no longer keep up with what the mind is telling it to do. So you get a disconnect between what the head is saying and what the body is actually feeling or experiencing. And that disconnect, it literally feels like a disconnect, like we're cut off from who we are. And that's because the thoughts, the patterns, the habits, the mindset is running its own story, its own narrative of life, its own experience, but the body's living in a completely different one. And so a healing journey for me was about bringing the connection back to these two things. It was about getting out of my head and into my body and allowing myself to feel all my feelings. And the truth about a healing journey is it's not comfortable and it's not easy. And, I wasn't, sat in a field meditating or going to sound baths every week and then suddenly I was joyful. There were a lot of days where I sat there and felt empty and felt nothing. There were lots of days where I cried for no reason. There were lots of days where I was absolutely freaking fuming. But that was allowing myself to feel what I was feeling and not diminish those experiences or not push those feelings down. When we get triggered, so we go through life experience and we're triggered by something or something sets us off, right? We always make these phrases like, oh, they just pissed me off. That's actually just poking at something that we haven't processed or that we haven't dealt with. So when we have something happens in life, so let's say you lose someone or a relationship ends or a chapter of your life ends and you feel sad about that. Most of us are taught to live in this kind of constant, must keep going, must keep moving, especially if you're British, right? We have a stiff freaking upper lip and we're supposed to just, be strong and keep calm and carry on. And that kind of behavior creates this feeling of suppression, of pushing these feelings down. And so emotions are energy in motion. So when we push feelings down, we're stopping the motion of those feelings and stopping them being processed. And the way that actually happens on a biological level is that, let's say someone makes me mad, maybe they cut me up in traffic and I feel rage, right? We've all felt that fight or flight, that survival, like the anger. Cortisol pumps in our body, all the kind of the sugar rushes to the muscles so that we've got energy to run away or we've got that energy to fight. This is called the fight-flight response. So your nervous system goes into that hyper mode because it's trying to protect you. This goes back to way, way, way back to caveman days where we had to run from saber-toothed tigers. So we get triggered in our daily life, right? We come up into this high stress state, which is designed to be helpful. It's designed to keep us alive. If we then don't process the experience, so that doesn't always mean we have to understand it or be okay with it or accept it, But if we aren't able to actually move through those feelings because we push it down through having an alcoholic drink or eating some food or running away from it, even that fight or flight, right? It's not just fight, it's flight. We push those feelings down. What that actually does is create stuck energy in the body. And that stuck energy is what gets triggered. But every time we get triggered, we go back up into that fight or flight mode. So what needs to happen in your nervous system is we need to go up and then we need to close the loop. I heard someone say the other day, oh, so-and-so was in a car accident and it really put them into shock. And my response was, oh, good, I'm glad. And the person was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I was like, the fact they went into shock means their nervous system went up and then did what it needed to do to come back down, and we close the loop. But when we go up all the time in our high stress lives, up, and we don't actually ever close the loop to come back down into what's called ventral vagal. So you have two parts of your nervous system. So sympathetic, which I know nothing to do with sympathy, but your sympathetic nervous system, which is like your fight flight response, we go up. You then need to come back down into your parasympathetic, which has two parts. Your ventral vagal, which is your happy, connected, joyful, calm, and your dorsal vagal, which is numb, disconnected, and empty. Most people are living between survival, high stress state, and dorsal vagal. So when you have that glass of wine to relax, you have that food, you have that scrolling, you have that TV, you're going from here to down here. And over time, that becomes the loop. But if we never get to close the loop and come back into these good feelings, or it doesn't feel safe to feel good feelings because, you know what, life is hard sometimes. And maybe we felt disappointments for a long time and we shut ourselves off so we didn't have to feel those disappointments. The truth is we then get stuck in this pattern. And this is where burnout can happen. This is where we lose sense of touch with life. We lose sense of who we are, of what we want, because we're not able to move back into that calm, that joy, that abundance, that good feeling place, because this has become the loop. But in order to close the loop of that experience, we have to allow ourselves to feel all the feelings that we've never felt. And I was definitely that person. I was willing to do all the work. I was willing to be up in my head. I was like, yes, I do therapy and I know all the therapeutic terms and I know why I do this and why that happened and I justify that and experience that. But I had to get out of my head and into my body. And at that point, and I literally remember when it was, I had a therapy session. I was actually in my car because I'd come back from somewhere and was late for therapy. And I said to my therapist, I said, I just got this overwhelming feeling of anxiety in my body, but I feel like I've mentally processed all of my experiences. And she said, it's time for somatic work. And I went, Samaha, what? And that's when I started to understand that meant body work. That meant getting into my body and allowing myself to feel. And what that has looked like for me is so many things. But this is why I know that so many women are ready for that healing era, but maybe just haven't put a label on it, or maybe have blamed hormones, or blamed having babies, or blamed a stressful career. But actually this time can be the most beautiful gateway, the most beautiful door to that next chapter of your life. If I had been stuck in that version of me, I'd still be exhausted. I'd still be empty. I'd still be seeking. I'd still be getting bored of everything and wanting to flip to the next thing. And this healing, that healing era, that healing journey led me to look within myself, to go within, to process and feel all the feelings. And I did that through lots of ways. And I talked about that on many, many of my previous podcasts about everything from emotional freedom technique to sound baths, to breath work, to listening to music, to dancing and raving like a knob. Like, I have done all the things to allow myself to feel. And what that's done is allow me to close the loop. So the anxious feeling in my gut is gone. The ruminating thoughts in my head are gone. And sometimes, that old version of me, she tries to step forward to protect me. She tries to show up and say, we should control this, we should plan this, we should, if you're an over-worrier, an overthinker, a ruminator, an over-planner, it made me great at my events career. But she tries to step forward sometimes. And this is why we do the body work, to make ourselves feel safe on a nervous system level. So that safety can be the foundation that when we hear those thoughts, the body doesn't automatically go into this state. And actually there's room between the thought and the feeling to go, oh, that's the old version of me. That's not the new version of me. That's not the version of me I want to be. Guys, I am well known for saying that if we want a different life, we have to become a different person. And the truth is, over the time since I finished my last podcast and even this one starting, I've become a different person. So this is the Lucy Superfox Show, and I'm still Lucy Superfox, but who I am today sits here as somebody who is ready not just for her freedom era, but for her growth era, and is ready for what comes next, even though I don't have a plan and I don't know what that is. because I feel safe enough inside me that I don't need to know what's coming next, because I just know that I'm good. And if I'm good, then what comes next will be good. So if right now you feel called to move into your healing era, I made you a program. I made you an exact framework to follow. I made you a container that you can feel safe in to go on your healing journey, no matter how long or how short it is, or how fast you want to move or how slow you want to go. So if you want to find out more about that, you can grab the Relaxed Transformation Masterclass underneath this. I'll pop that link in the show notes. It's completely free. All of my kind of free resources are that. They're free meditations, free ebooks. You can find it all in the links below, because I know that maybe right now you've been called to watch this. You've been called to listen to this because there's something in this that resonates about where you need to go next. But if you are ready to become a different person, then the Becoming program is the framework, the space, and the container for you to do that. So I cannot wait to see you join me on this journey of the Lucy Superfox Show. I cannot wait for you to meet the guests, to hear more about my next era, and to go on that journey with me. And I will see you on the next episode.